Thank you for joining the Missing Half podcast, where we're discovering what's missing in manufacturing and B2B marketing. Today, I'm joined by Brett Kaufman, Director of Sales and Marketing at B-TEK. Brett, thank you for joining us today.
Bill, thanks for having me.
Great. So, Brett, we like to get started here by getting to know our guests a little bit better. And, we don't start back where we were born, with our mother in the hospital, but maybe in that educational time frame.
Sure.
And what brought you here into your career. So we have some kind of reference and perspective as we get your feedback and input on these topics.
For sure. Yep. I went to school in Louisiana, played golf in college.
Oh, wow.
So, far away from Ohio, but want to go somewhere warm. So, anyway, here I am. Let's see, 2008, I was looking for a sales position and I wanted something in the industrial world. Okay. I didn't necessarily think I would be in the truck scale world, but here I am and never looked back. So things are good. And started, if you want some of the history of B-TEK, started with a regional territory. Okay. So I was actually on the Brechbuhler side. I was on the distribution side for a few years.
Okay.
Moved over to B-TEK formally 2011. And I was doing corporate account stuff. So I was calling on Fortune 100, Fortune 500 type journeys. Some of those companies bought direct from the manufacturer. So I was facilitating those relationships. And then I believe 2012 took over a sales team. And that's morphed into a sales and marketing team then. Okay, over, I guess, the last few years. And I guess you'd say I'm responsible for everything customer facing. So all commercial sides of the business, product managers, marketing people, sales people.
Excellent. So maybe tell us a little bit about who B-TEK is, what they do, who they do for, just kind of that elevator pitch as we sales and marketing guys like to talk about.
B-TEK is a full line manufacturer of scales. We start at something that you put on this tabletop, call it 50-pound capacity, and we go up to 1,000,000-pound capacity. We offer vehicle scales, airplanes, anything you could think of.
1,000,000 pounds, that's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Things that you'd never drive next to on the road. Let's put it that way.
I'm trying to envision something that weighs 1,000,000 pounds, and that's scary, but that's good that you guys have figured that out.
For sure.
It's awesome. So, interesting journey. You came up through the sales side.
Yes.
And when you look at being in charge of sales and marketing, that's kind of exciting from my perspective, because we're always trying to see that alignment between sales and marketing and breaking down those silos. What have you experienced and learned as you've gone through that process that you maybe have discovered was missing when you took it over, but you were able to kind of bring together and break down those walls?
Yeah, sales and marketing go hand in hand. I think they go hand in hand in most organizations, whether people want to admit that or not. Sometimes I think our best salespeople are in the marketing department,
sure,
and vice versa in many ways. But some things that were missing, it was just, we're so young in this industry. So we started out in the service business, and we're very unique from a manufacturer standpoint in starting in the service industry and then moving into manufacturing. We could get into more of that later, but
sure.
From the manufacturer side, we're only 25 years old. And I think the next youngest is probably double that.
Sure.
And so just really building the brand recognition and the brand awareness throughout the country. It's very, very difficult throughout all of North America. You travel around and you hear people say, hey, you have a great product, but nobody knows who you are. And we struggled with that a little bit because, truck scales, there's brand recognition is important, but then also your service company, they are pushing a brand per se usually. And so what your service company recommends is also very important. But we are calling on distributors. We are talking to distributors every day. And so when a distributor says, these people don't know your scale, these people don't know your name, but we really like your scale, well, then that's on us. That's on us to push the name and to help make things easier for them, for our customers.
So this is a topic that I don't really am passionate about, and I think is so important, is branding. When we think of branding, a lot of folks in the industrial or B2B marketing space kind of say, well, that's for Coca-Cola or the big brands for the Super Bowl ads and all of that. and branding should just be left in that space. We sell directly to very small groups of people, and that's not important. But we're seeing more and more allocation happening in B2B budgeting for marketing, in branding, to make people brand aware so that then they can move to solution aware right from the company. And that's so interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah. Well, everybody can learn at their fingertips.
Yes.
Right? So everybody's got a Google machine at their fingertips, and everybody can learn anything they want to know. So just naturally, I think the human instinct now is to be more inquisitive and try to understand just more about the companies that were behind the scenes before, and looking for options. Everybody's looking for options. Nobody wants to be tied down to one company or one service company or one brand. And so there's just more out there. I think brand awareness is a big deal, no matter if you're a manufacturer that supplies to other businesses, or if you're a service company, or if you're, name whoever you want. It's important.
Sure.
You have to have a presence.
So another thing you brought up there, which is so vitally important, you manufacture a product that has to have a servicing dealer attached to it, really, for it to be successful in the market. This isn't something you just sell and ship off.
Installation too.
Yeah, installation, calibration, the certification, the whole thing. Yeah. So that's a challenge as well, because you're really looking at, you have to sell the distributor, but then you also have to have that pull through to the end user. So that's a double-edged sword that you're dealing with every day.
Yep. Our dealers are our lifeblood, for sure. No, we wouldn't be here without them. But you have to bring them value. And part of bringing them value is making it easier for them to sell your product, which is getting the pull from the consumer to say, I saw something about that truck scale. Sure, I think I want one of those. I think I want to learn more about one of those. And so that's huge. But then on the flip side, if you don't have a product that's easy to work on and you install, the distributor is never going to want to have it. They're going to want to mess with it.
Yeah, no matter how good the marketing is, no matter how good the support is,
100%.
if there's not a good product there, you're dead in the water.
100%.
So that's great. One, I think that kind of leads us into some of the things I want to talk to you about today. When you look at what you've achieved here at B-TEK, in that when you came, obviously this is a younger company, and you came and took over the sales and the marketing, and you guys were identifying maybe some gaps or what was missing in supporting those dealers. And there's just some real interesting things I've observed you guys do over the past couple of years that hopefully they've worked, and we're going to ask you like how they're working and what was missing, and if you found them to be valuable, because I think other marketing managers in our audience would say, hey, that sounds interesting. I wonder if we should try it, those type of things. But when you look at your dealer support on like the marketing and content side and those type of things, can you maybe talk us through like what you saw was missing that kind of gave you the strategic plan that's brought you up to this point, and why you developed some of the things you did? And I have some specific questions I'd like to ask about specific items, but I'll let you start broadly.
Yeah, so painting a broad brush, I would say you want to make things as easy as possible for distributors to get your product in their hands. So we made a web store. So you can order any product we have if you have a distributor login. So think of the technician going down the street that needs a replacement part. Hopefully he pulls over, he's not driving, but he can order it from our site, right? In theory, you could order a truck scale from our site.
Sure.
And so all of that is just more accessible, easier. We live in this age where nobody wants to talk anymore. And so having something like just call it a self-service portal, or store, that was a very big deal. And then, talking about content. So you're just things that we're doing that we put out there for dealers. Hopefully they can repurpose that. They can repurpose that with our help, but sure, hopefully they utilize that. I've heard they do utilize a lot of our material and send it along to end users or consumers that are interested in our products. Sure, so that helps a bunch. The Google AdWords, and really it's a tough game to play, but you have to play it, and you have to be involved, and you have to have a presence. That, along with just all the money that we've put into our site and making sure that it's friendly for the browsers that are crawling it. Sure, so all of that I think is hugely important. And then we there's some programs that we have where we give marketing funds back to distributors, and we give them the chance to host local trade shows with B-TEK Showcased, be part of national trade shows that we do, put more gear on their employees, which is a big deal. Your logos paraded around a job site. That's a big deal. But just whatever they choose to spend their money on, however they think it's best spent.
The dealer fund participation, in my early career, I worked with our family company, and we were John Deere dealership. We had New Holland dealerships. We were Honda still.
Yeah.
And we utilized those, we called them, they were either dealer participation funds or co-op funds, and they had all kinds of different labels, but it was all the same. It was like basically rebate available based off of purchases that we could reinvest in marketing items that could help us grow our business. And one of the things we did a really good job of in that business, which I'd encourage your dealer channel to do, or any marketing manager who's trying to grow this type of program, is encourage those dealers to use the funds and participate. We had a goal every year of 98 to 99% utilization of those funds. And the people we dealt with at those manufacturers would always say that we were weird. We were the outlet because we were using it, and there were others that just left it all on the table.
Yeah.
And my encouragement to your dealer channel, to others who have distributors, dealers, that type of thing, is make the effort to use those funds because you want to spend them. Nothing would please you more than all those funds were depleted every year and deployed, and the swag, the whatever the items are perpetuating that market. And sometimes I feel like the dealer feels like, oh, they don't want us to spend that. No, go use it. Like, utilize these tools.
You have these dealers that are so busy day to day, and maybe they don't have the structure of people or, a bunch of marketing people that could track some of this. And you understand that their business has been rolling along so good and is rolling along so good that they're not necessarily focused on the marketing or doing anything else. But yes, you want them to utilize it just from a appreciation standpoint. We want to give this back to you, and a lot of times they'll co-brand things. Sure, they'll put our logo, their logo on. But yeah, like you're saying, utilization of this is so important because there will come a time where you may not think you have to market, but you're going to have to market. Absolutely. That time's coming sooner than later, I fear.
And the time to do that is before you need to do it. Right. The time to invest in the marketing budget isn't when sales are down, cash flow's weak, and you're in a position of like poverty, right? You're in a bad spot. The time to invest is when things are good, so you never get
that about 18-month ramp up is really dark.
Yes.
It's really quiet.
And let's be honest, in today's marketing world, you can't just my early career, now we're really going to date me. You can't just call the rep at the billboard or the newspaper and get an ad cranking by deadline.
Yeah.
If you want to play the game, if you want to be in the manufacturing, the B2B marketing space, you have to build a foundation. You have to build followers. You have to have content, right? There's a lot of work in that, and it takes time to build traction. So 18-month ramp up is what it would take to your ramp up.
Sure.
And you can't it was not the old days of, call and see what the press time is. And I think the unfortunate reality is a lot of distributors and dealers and those type of businesses still kind of operate in that mentality. I'll do it when I have to. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a lot of our clients have in their dealer channels, a lot of dealerships or distributors fail because they wait too long and then they just can't recover.
Yep.
They whether it's financial or people power, whatever, they just aren't able to get over that hump because they didn't start soon enough. So I think that's a word of encouragement to all these folks out there to do that. That would be great. But one of the things you mentioned, I think this is so critical. We're seeing a lot of development and we're developing a lot of this for these things for our clients, is what we would call B2B commerce. Mm-hmm. So websites that are not designed for the consumer, but operate like e-commerce sites. So you have full access to the entire catalog readily available. Yeah, right. On the phone, on the desktop, on the tablet, in the service truck, however they choose to interact. But that, to me, I think you guys were ahead of the curve on that development because we're seeing some clients just adopt that like in the mid-market. So have you seen that adoption and usage by your users and really seen that that's helped them to have more access to information more quickly?
Yeah, you just have to make things easier. It doesn't matter who your customer is or your target customer, you have to make things easier for everyone. So easier to find your product, easier to find your name, and easier to buy your product. You have to. And so that's what we've done for dealers, and I think it's been a huge help.
Well, and the consumer behavior then soon follows commercial behavior. So if I'm used to being able to go to Amazon or wherever I shop online quickly and find stuff and buy it, it's not that we're going to necessarily buy a truck scale that quickly, but we're going to research it and know all about it before and have access to all that information before we're ready to engage it. And certainly it seems in the smaller offerings that you have, that can be more immediate.
Yeah. So I related to that, but we've got an interesting tool on our website where it's a CRM. It's a CRM for our dealers, because there's a lot of our dealers that don't have a structured program, and they want professional looking quotes, and they want something that they're proud of when they're in front of the end user. And so we developed a CRM where they could put their company's logo, company name, contact information, and then showcase our products on there. And so, yes, that will build the behavior that you're talking about as well.
So let's talk about discovering something that's missing. I think there's a gold nugget. Yeah, come on. I am a firm believer. Our company uses a proposal automation software because if I'm presenting something that is more than $5, I want the proposal to look like it's more than $5, right? And when you're dealing with professionals to professionals, because this isn't, I'm sure you're seeing this business transition from fewer hometown entrepreneurs running scales to professional businesses that have scales as part of a greater operation. You can't show up the way we did 30 years ago, right? And you've been on the road selling. I, in an early part of my career, was on the road selling, so we get that, right? We understand. So maybe we need to recognize that something that probably is missing for a lot of marketing managers and sales managers out there is their dive into professional, and whether you call it proposal automation, proposal standardization, that type of thing. Whenever you identify that as a missing item and then like walk through the journey of implementing that with the dealers, could you talk about that a little bit and how it maybe impacted and changed maybe the perception of the dealer and of the B-TEK product whenever they're showing up with that nice organized proposal?
For the dealer, it helped a bunch because there's some traceability now. They can track quotes. They can track how much volume's out there. They can track the customers that have quotes of different people in the organization that quoted things without maybe the president knowing or the GM knowing. So there's some of that, obviously. But yeah, I think gone are the days of people buying $60,000, $70,000 truck scales with a handshake. So just naturally, you want to have something that's more professional looking, something that if it gets handed down to a purchasing agent, if it gets handed up, wherever it goes, you want your company image to go along with that. And so it's really been an easy adoption, and people, our customers, our dealers have really appreciated it. And so it's pretty user-friendly. It's a lot more user-friendly than I thought. Our marketing manager who told me about this idea, I thought it was a great idea, but I said, implementing this is going to be pretty difficult. But no, he's done a great job, and it's a great tool that is being utilized.
So I think there's two other things you hit on there. One, branding, right? When we talked about branding earlier, now you're talking about branding the whole way from first touch point, the whole way through to the quote, right? That's important.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I think we see is really talking about the buyer committee, because I think you're exactly right. You're not just handing it to one person and they're handshaking and John Hancocking the agreement. It's going to finance. It's going to engineering. It's going to whatever the participants are in the buyer's committee who are going to sign off on that purchase. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, and a huge part of it for us is how our product is presented.
Sure.
Right? The specs that are presented, the important items that people need to know about. And so we want to control the message a little bit more. And this essentially accomplishes that.
Yeah, when you look at the B-TEK product line and the specific things that you guys do really, really well and differently than other manufacturers of scales, certainly when you're going to that point of sale and getting someone to sign off on it. I mean, you came from the sales team, you sold Fortune 100, so you were in very competitive, very professional situations. You need to make sure your features and benefits and the things that are going to solve their problems are at the forefront of their mind when they're making that decision. They're not just looking at $70,000 a scale, right? Because you lost that opportunity for that final touch point. So that's really interesting. And I think I had no idea we were going to talk about that today and doing research for this. That's like I'm discovering what's missing.
Yeah, they would all things to make it easier for our dealers.
Yep.
And that's what it is.
That's great. So one of the challenges I think that you guys may face is that you're selling everything from the £1 million scale, like you said at the beginning, down to the tabletop 50-pound scale.
Yeah.
And I imagine you're having to segment the audiences a good bit and then really recognize the challenges. I'm sure there's similarities. They want accurate measurements. They want to be certified. They want uptime, all of that. But then there's some other things that you have to message completely differently.
Vastly different worlds.
Yeah, because that's
Absolutely.
some are long-term buying cycles. Fortune 100 big £1 million. I'm guessing £1 million are not being bought by local entrepreneurs. Those are pretty big companies.
Right.
And then the desktop or countertop, whatever you want to call them, that could be purchased really by a tremendously wide variety of people. So what have you experienced like in how maybe how you approached tackling that huge issue?
Yeah, it sounds kind of elementary, but you have to start at making sure you have the right lists internally, right? Sure. So when you're marketing to end users, you have to make sure that you're not telling somebody about a £1 million off-road vehicle scale and they're in the market for a washed-down bench scale.
Sure.
You know, you're going to lose it right away. Unsubscribe.
Yep.
Right away.
Yeah.
And so you have to make sure that you have, we have a lot of data on our side to show who's interested at what, and we make sure we never cross that up.
Sure.
With that said, definitely appreciate both sides of the coin for sure, because the people that are buying bench scales, they're buying them more frequently, and the world is filled with a bunch more of those. Mm-hmm. However, that's a very competitive, very, very competitive market. On the other side of it, everybody's chasing the home run ball, right? And so the £1 million off-road vehicle scale, everybody, that's the flashy thing in the room,
Super
so to speak, right? Right. Can make your year. Yep. Salesperson. But there's a lot less of those being sold.
Sure.
So it's interesting, actually, from a product manager standpoint, just the focus, and we can. The nice thing about being young and being, as a manufacturer, being younger, and I don't even want to say smaller, but middle of the road, sure, that relates to our industry. The nice thing is we're very flexible. So from the product management standpoint, we have a great team. We have 4 product managers, and they're very nimble and very, very capable of making some modifications and doing some things to target what we want to target. If we're missing the mark with a product, change it.
Sure.
We modify it. We do what we need to do so it fits the market. With that other stuff, it's a little harder.
Sure.
With the bigger stuff, it's harder. But on the little stuff or the smaller stuff, there's no less focus on that.
Sure.
As you can imagine, it carries higher margin.
Sure.
On some of that. And, again, there's more of those being sold. So you appreciate the repeat business, so to speak, and you appreciate the replacement time frame in those versus something that lasts 20 years. Those are just things coming from a manufacturer. But yeah, very, very different. Very sure. And there are days, I'm sure a salesperson says, there are days where I'm consumed by 50-pound capacity washdown scales, and then there are days where they're out in the middle of the field looking at some blueprints, and it's going to be 10 truck scales.
Sure.
And that's what's cool about this business. It's never the same. Never the same thing twice, day after day.
So a couple of things you said there. Data and segmentation, so critical. I have a podcast next week with a professional that I really respect, and I won't, no spoiler alert here, but all we're going to talk about is data and how important that is, and organizing it in CRMs and integrating marketing automation platforms and CRMs. I mean, that's the entire, we're going to geek out a little bit, which is exciting, but you're exactly right that customer segmentation and personalization of messaging is the only way to deal with a complex manufactured offering. And you guys are, I think, are doing a great job of it and doing the right thing. But for some of our audience, they might, get some inspiration or find a nugget there. The other thing I'd like to pivot to is you mentioned about the nimble team you have, the engineering and manufacturing space. One of the things I know about B-TEK is you guys have a customization option and customization or customizability, whatever the word is, that is not as prevalent amongst your competitors. Could you maybe talk about that, that capability, and then maybe how you attempted to communicate that to the market in your marketing efforts?
Yeah, so it's funny, let's call it flexibility from the manufacturing standpoint. So 95 years ago, started in the service business and through the years grew pretty well and got to, let's say, late 90s, dozen offices, and really had a need. We were a distributor for everybody's scales, and we had a need for things that people did not want to make. So you have this 30-year-old scale and you never thought about it. You got trucks rolling over it every day. It's in a pit, and now all of a sudden you have to replace it. And everybody says, okay, here's today's version, and you've got to do some concrete work and you're going to have to put it above ground. Well, B-TEK started because we came to the game and said, no, you don't. We're going to make a scale to fit that hole. We're going to make a retrofit scale to fit that foundation. And we still hold true to that today. 25 years later, that is still a huge niche for us. That is still a huge competitive advantage for us. And so we've carried that really into everything that we do. So there's the good and the bad there. You don't want to open it up where you tell people you can have whatever you want.
Sure, okay. That's Pandora's box.
That's not the way to go to market. So you have to have some standards. But at the same time, when you're all across North America, with our partner, we're all across the world, and we see different things. And that's why I bring up adapting. Yeah, if we see markets changing or we see things that are being asked for that weren't being asked for 3, 5, 8 years ago, we bid it. Sure, we do what we need to do to accommodate the customer. And so, yeah, that's hugely important. And because we're not, I guess, set in our ways and as rigid and as older of a manufacturer, we're able to do that a lot more nimble than most.
I think that speaks to how B-TEK is customer focused, not accountant focused, maybe. Yeah. Because I think when you look at some of the competition in this space, the way they're trying to scale up and get volume is through standardization.
And manufacturers all about
right? Yeah, make the same thing 1,000 times. See how much time can do it as bad as you can. Yeah. Yes. So I think when we look at what you guys are doing, that really speaks to your customer focus and then that opportunity. Because when we look at it, okay, if someone has to do concrete work, they have to get an engineer, they have to get an architect, or like permits, construction. And we all know what's happened in construction labor availability in the United States over the past 10 years. You can't find anybody to do it. If you can, they're 6-8 months out, a year out. The expenses through the roof. Mm-hmm. Concrete is insane how much concrete costs. So when you look at all those, the time, the cost, the downtime, as opposed to, hey, B-TEK, in 6 months, I'm planning on doing this. I want to pull the old one out. I want you to have your retrofitted snap in. And I know I'm oversimplifying a little bit. Snap it in, and I'm back up and operating a day, 2 days later, whatever. That's amazing.
So you're saving, typically our dealers do not have construction crews. So you're saving a dealer from going out and finding a construction crew who you work with and managing that. That's difficult. Sure. And then you're saving the end user a bunch of money because you're just not bringing any of that into the fold. You're saying, look, your foundation's good. It's still intact. We're going to put a scale right here. You like it here. We're going to keep it right here. And it helps.
And not only are you like retrofitting, keeping them, no downtime, they're back in business, reduced investment, you're getting them into the new world of scales where they can integrate a lot of, which I think is another challenge you guys face, because you don't just do scales.
Yeah.
There's two other areas I think that are really challenging for you guys because you're you're in these two worlds. Number one is you are actively marketing and supporting software systems because scales aren't, one side, the other, and you just see it, right? There's a lot of sensors and a lot of things. So, Brett, one of the things I think that's a challenge for you and your team is not only are you selling from 1 million pounds down to 50-pound scales, this is 2024. You're also selling and servicing and supporting software as part of that because scales are very, very complicated. There's a lot of data points. Could you talk a little bit about that challenge and what you've been doing to help market that and communicate that to your distributor dealer channel?
Sure. Yeah. So 10 years ago, you'd sit in the conference room like this, and it was talking about the deck plate, the thickness of the deck plate, how many I-beams there were. It was talking about how durable and rugged scales were. And the conversation has shifted, and it's shifted pretty drastically to, all right, I've got a weight. Now what do I do with the weight? And I want to set it here. I want to set it there. I want to set it to our ERP. Can you communicate with that? And that's a huge part of what we do. You talk about kiosks and unattended software. Well, 2020 changed all of that.
Sure.
So now it was the driver's not getting out of the truck. The driver needs to be able to pull up to an unattended site, needs to be able to get a ticket, maybe input some information, maybe talk to somebody that's in the office through an intercom.
Mm-hmm.
But it was purely just stay in your truck. And, that hasn't changed. Sure. And that's not going to change. That's going to keep going. Now, it's funny on the other side for software, we're the world's smartest scales. That's our title.
Sure.
All right. So talk a lot about how we build things, but then also our components. Very, very intuitive. The most intuitive, I'd like to say, in the world. So our load cells come from Italy, right down the street from Bugatti, Ferrari, Lamborghini. So a very progressive place.
Sure.
What does that mean to everyone? Well, we introduced this load cell, which for those people that don't know, load cells are the components under a truck scale.
Sure.
Or under any scale, but specifically talking about our digital load cell under a truck scale. So you have this component that we introduced back in the early 2000s, and we said, hey, we guarantee it against lightning. It's wild.
Yeah.
Like this huge slab of steel in the middle of nowhere, and now you're guaranteeing this thing against lightning.
You're like Benjamin Franklin.
That's crazy. And that was crazy. You really to the industry, that was crazy at the time. And then we took it a step further. Again, speaking to how intuitive in the manufacturing process and the digital load cell versus an analog load cell, we had a bunch of Fortune 500 companies. We were the first one to certify this load cell to 10-pound increments.
Oh, wow.
So without getting too deep in the woods, you got 20 pounds are how all truck scales measure trucks, right? Well, this was the first one to say we can do it in 10 pounds. So yeah, all these Fortune 500s are like, you don't know what to do with this. We're going to put this in a Six Sigma study, and we don't think that's twice the material. We don't think that's twice as accurate, but we know we're getting something out of that.
Sure.
And so that was huge. Well, then fast forward to today, and we're in the technology age where now we have these diagnostics that you can have. So if you have 30 gravel pits throughout the country and you own 60 scales, well, you can look at every one of your scales on your phone, on your computer, through our portal.
Sure.
And you could predict any upcoming failures, any issues that the scale is seeing that may end up being catastrophic.
Sure.
You can understand what's going on from a maintenance perspective when you need somebody to come out, and that's automatically scheduled with your service company.
Sure.
And then if you have scales down, you can see exactly why they're down. And your service company can too. So that means they're selling the right people, the right parts, and they know what to work on. And so, yeah, I went a different route with you on the technology side, but that is all hugely impactful to our business. And it's why and how we set ourselves up to be in the position we are on the growth curve today.
Sure.
And why we're having the impact that we're having.
No, that's great. Well, I think that's a unique challenge because you have that whole good, that piece of steel, right? You're pushing out of there, but then there's so much of a brain there that can interact and really work for people and help them, whether it's reducing downtime, reducing service costs, keeping uptime, And then certainly, I think the accuracy is just so critical, because when you're weighing things that are really, really valuable, or lots of things that have any value, variation there, and there's a lot of loss can occur.
Yeah.
I'm sure those folks who were doing the Six Sigma analysis, all the bean counters, when they heard 10-pound increments, they were just like, wow, this is the most amazing thing ever.
And we bring it to life on our website through the product loss calculator. That's been hugely beneficial for us as well, talking about other components of the site that have helped, whether it's end users or distributors, just get the point across of, hey, this is what an error on your truck scale or your truck scale being down, this is what it's costing you.
So I think that's something I want to ask you about, because the product loss calculators feels to me like a great way to make people problem aware. Mm-hmm. When we think about branding, super important component we talked about before, and then solution aware. Sometimes people don't even know the problem they have to recognize that they need a solution,
Right.
Or opportunity, whatever you want to call it, depending, glass half empty, half full problem or an opportunity. But those calculators to me seem like a real tangible way for not only you and your distributor, but for that purchasing manager who's in charge of buying the scale, to bring some tangibility to what they can do with an upgrade, not only of the hardware and the scale, but then the software, the systems, all of those things. I mean, that's great. And have you gotten a lot of feedback from your dealers on through the whole cycle?
Yeah. It's funny, sometimes marketing guys bring you something and you're like, all right, let's ease it.
Yeah.
But we introduced that a couple of years ago on our site. And then funny, Steve Coddington, who's our Northeast regional manager, I was with him 3 weeks ago, and we were in a very large company, industrial gas company.
Okay.
And he has this in his presentation, and he's going through it, and he's got the price, today's price of whatever chemical or whatever it was. And I looked at that and I said, are you sure? Are you sure about that number? Because otherwise we're going to get laughed out of the room. And he was correct. And it was so impactful to the room, and then also impactful to us, because it was, we're with our distributors in the room, and it's like, you want to haggle over $5,000? That's 2 minutes on your scale.
Sure. Let's put this in perspective.
Yeah. And so it really has, all the credit to the marketing team at B-TEK and to the salespeople using it, because I didn't even see the value necessarily. And it's very, very impactful.
Well, and there's another example we talked about a little bit before, but creating that alignment between sales and marketing, because you have, the problem, and you're creating awareness around it. And on the website alone, and sometimes we create things in marketing that we want to be used, like, okay, would it be amazing if 1 million people use that calculator?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it isn't used at the top of the funnel. Maybe it's used at the bottom of the funnel, or in sales enablement. Sure. And either way, as long as it gets used and we're working towards the greater good, that's good. But
for sure,
that's a great example of finding those tools that can work top of the funnel. Because I could see in my mind, some social posts, hey, calculate what you're losing at your scale. So that's top of the funnel. But then, hey, we're in a presentation, we're in a boardroom, and the buyers committee's there, and we're going to show them dollars and cents why this is important. That's great. That's amazing.
Yeah, one of those scenarios where a marketing person is a much better salesperson than they think.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. And sometimes you have the salespeople who have some amazing insights for marketing. So that's great. You guys have also developed for your dealers a web kit with your brand standards and developing that type of thing. What led you to create that? What was missing? When did you determine was missing as to why you developed that? And what was the goal of that program?
Yeah, I think with any service company, you get going and doing the same thing over and over, day after day, and you have customers calling and you're reacting to, say, the fire of the day, and you're not spending just the stuff we talked about before. You're not spending all this time marketing yourself and putting yourself out there for what you are. And, in most scenarios, that works fine in our industry, right? But you also need to have a web presence. Like we talked about, the buyer is becoming more educated. The buyer wants to learn more. So you have to have something beyond just, hey, here's a business card, here's my name, call us. So we wanted to, again, control how our product was portrayed, how our product was presented to the world. And it was a natural progression for us with Google AdWords and some of the SEO, SEM stuff that we were doing. It was a natural progression for us to say, we don't necessarily have to work quite as hard and spend quite as much money with the Google machine if we can get enough good stuff backlinking to us. So
Sure.
Again, it's helping the distributor that doesn't have a lot of time to focus on those efforts, but trying to show them that those efforts are hugely important, but then also trying to help ourselves, because you're playing that Google game all day and that's the only thing you're doing is SEO, SEM, probably not going to win.
Sure. Absolutely. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit here in some of our final minutes. And one of the challenges we're seeing with a lot of our clients and with people we talk to in the market is how to attack the marketing area, right? Because there's this balance between insourcing, outsourcing, a hybrid model, and like having enough experts available, because everything, it's almost like the medical community. You go to see the primary and then they refer to 37 people. And not that I want to draw a lot of comparisons, because that could go negative really quick with people's experiences. But whenever you think about strategically approaching the marketing function, because you're in charge of that and you're trying to give that the proper direction, what do you see as some of the tensions there with insourcing versus outsourcing and some of those ideas?
I'd say just point number one, if you have customers that are calling your marketing department or calling you needing things, so a little bit more of the business to business model.
Sure.
But, we have dealers, great customers that are calling us needing marketing help, whether it's literature, whether it's proposals, things with the website, help on there, whether it's trade show help, trade show direction, MDF funds, all of that stuff. If you have people calling for that, you need to have that internal.
Agreed.
You have to have somebody that they can call, somebody that they feel good talking to. My opinion on the rest of it has probably changed quite a bit in the last few years, because we have a few great companies that we work with. Sure, you have a really good web development company that is very responsive to what we need from the website. We have a great team. Actually, locally, we have a great team that's managing the SEO, SEM stuff that we're doing. Yeah, and so I'd say we found more third parties. We have a content writer that's helping with some things.
Okay.
Found more third parties that are responsive and that we enjoy working with. And so it's going very well. 3 years ago, 5 years ago, I think my vision was we bring all that in-house, but it's hard. It's really hard as you grow, and some of the skill sets need to be tweaked or changed, and things that were important today aren't important or are going to be important 5 years from now. It's funny. I'll give you an example. It's like, I can't tell you the last time we sent literature out. I used to spend 30 to 40% of our time on literature, whether it be better pictures, better renderings, better color schemes, less text, more text. And I can't tell you the last time we have sent physical literature out.
Sure.
Crazy. But I don't see it coming back. No, I don't see it going the other way. So anyway, you have to be able to adapt, and you have to be able to tweak the expectations and tweak what you need, and essentially tweak what you have.
So just to follow up on what you said, we found that what you're describing is exactly where we're finding the most success in our space, is that the hybrid model, what we call it, where you have that core internal team that absolutely has to be available to support your client network. Because as an agency, we are not built to take a call from your distributor who needs that level of support. But as far as helping prepare that support, and then for us and for other providers to build those capabilities so that they can meet you where you have needs, that is certainly something we've seen in the hybrid model that is very, very advantageous. And we've really refined our ideal client profile, where we're looking for companies that have 1 to 3 people on their marketing team internally, and that we're going to provide all that for secondary support. And like you're saying, it's changing so rapidly. We've seen the focus on search, SEO. Those have really taken a different turn, and especially with the GA4 implementation. And then we're going to start seeing some other, like, imagine Google algorithmic changes, like, every 5 minutes.
Yeah, right.
So that's all there. But when we're looking at the content front, that seems to be the horizon that everybody's chasing right now that is really activating the market. So that's where we've been putting a lot of our resources. But one of the challenges we face is that we know our business will never be the same year to year. This time last year, I had never been on a podcast. And today is sometime in May. I don't know what date it is even, because we've been in that house for a little bit, but it's a day in May. And we're up to almost our 20th episode of our podcast. We produce podcasts for clients. We are that is just growing rapidly, and the response is amazing. And then what we're doing with social media and the clips and the reels and the shorts and all that type of thing has just exploded. And I'm sure in 5 years, we won't be doing podcasts.
Right.
It'll be something else. So we just have to constantly be investing, kind of like you guys had to do with the load cells and the software and the peripherals. You have to stay ahead of that curve because it's just really developing rapidly. So, well, Brett, this has been a fascinating conversation. I really love this. We certainly did discover some things that were missing, and even missing what we were thinking about, and some nuggets we uncovered. Good. So thank you for the time today. Want to wish you guys continued congratulations on your success. You guys are doing a really great job here, and just thanks for the time today.
Thanks for having me, Bill. We did it.
Thank you.